Hey guys, today on the podcast got Drew Mitchell, former Queensland Reds winger, Western Force winger, and New South Wales Waratahs winger. He also played in 3 World Cups for the Wallabies on the wing. He's also played for Toulon in France. Hope you guys enjoy the podcast today. What did you want to be when you were growing up?
You know what? I think it, like a lot of probably kids, it changed quite a lot. I think there was, I'm the youngest of 3 boys, so sport was always something that was really big in my family, and we tried many different sports and that type of thing. So I think wanting to be a sportsman was always there or thereabouts. I think at one point I wanted to be like a marine biologist at one point. What else do I want to be? Like, it changes quite a lot, but I think the one consistent for me was I always wanted to be involved in sport. It's something that I really loved, and I played, like I said, many different sports, mostly rugby league growing up and little athletics. I didn't start playing rugby union until I went to secondary school at 13 at St Pat's up there in Brisbane and Shorncliffe. So, but yeah, always heavily involved in sports. I think everyone anyone who plays sport as a young kid always probably dreams of becoming a professional sportsman or woman. But I guess. Yeah, I was pretty lucky that it came true for me.
Yeah, what sports did you play as a kid? Rugby league, little athletics?
Rugby league, I played rugby league, little athletics. My father was in the army, so we moved around quite a lot. There was a time where he was posted down to Victoria at an army barracks called Puckapungle, and there wasn't any rugby league or rugby union really available at that time. So I played AFL for 3 years, and I wasn't very good at that. I used to chase around and get the ball pretty well, but I wasn't so good at kicking, which is probably evident later on in my career as well. It's never a strong tool of mine. But what else have I played? At school, I played volleyball. I wasn't much of a cricketer. I didn't have the eyesight for cricket, so I stayed away from that. Wasn't much of a swimmer. Nothing really, always on the land, nothing too much in the water. I even did life saving, life saving for a few years when we were based at Manly. But I always just liked all the events on land. So, the flags where you lay down and you run and chase the little hose and the beach sprints. But I didn't really like going out into the waves too much. So anything really where I could just be on land and run around was always pretty comfortable.
Yeah. How would your oldest friend describe you?
I don't know. I guess what you hope for is that he would say that I was loyal, trustworthy, but at the same time also, can good sense of humour, can have a bit of a laugh. Goes to my first mate at secondary school was David Ingram. He goes by the name of Chicken, and he was my first mate I made at secondary school, and he's still someone I'm really close with and basically speak to every day. I'd say that, if he was to say that I was trustworthy, loyal, and could have a good laugh, then I'd be pretty happy with that.
Yeah. What are you most proud of in life and career?
I don't know. I guess that's tough. I think probably the one I'm most proud of is the relationships I have. So with my family, mum and dad, and my 2 older brothers, and extended family with, my sister-in-laws. And so both my brothers are married with 3 kids. They're both in the army as well. So I'm a little bit behind in terms of, life milestones, because I don't have a partner or kids just yet. So, but hopefully that's on my horizon. But I think what I'm most proud of is those relationships and friendships. So, like I said, with friends of mine from school that I'm still really close to and speak to every week. But then also the friendships I've forged through rugby as well is something that, I hold really dear to me and something that I'm really proud of. But then I think if I was to look at professionally, I don't know. I think probably just the way that the way I've probably more about the way I've gone about my work rather than what it is that I've achieved or haven't achieved. It was more just, I guess the way I've gone about things. And hopefully, one thing I always wanted when I stepped away from the game was for people to speak highly of me and to have, nice words to say about me, as opposed to the opposite. So if I've achieved that, then that's what I'm most proud of.
I definitely speak highly of you.
Oh, thank you, mate. Cheers.
How do you handle hard times?
Look, it's difficult, right? Sometimes it's harder than others, and everyone's everyone's pain and hardships are different. So just because someone's going through something and they find it really hard, and you've been through the same thing, you don't find it as hard, doesn't necessarily mean to say that they're weaker. It's just everyone's perception of pain or hardship is different, and we have to take that into account. So for me, sometimes, whether it be relationships breaking up or getting dropped from the Wallabies, or getting in trouble from my parents when I was growing up for not doing my room, anything like that seemed like something really bad at the time. I guess the way I always went through it was just try to find the positive in it. Understand that those times are never going to last. So, there's one saying that I guess I've always that's rung true to me is, like, good times never last, but neither do the bad times, if that makes sense. So, remember the time where you're most happiest or the proudest or the most fulfilled. Unfortunately, those times don't last, but that also means then the opposite of that is the times where you've felt the most pain or the most upset or the most embarrassed. It means that those times aren't going to last always for a long period of time either. So if you can kind of keep that mentality, just like get around, support yourself with people who are close to you, friends and family, people that make you happy, people that support you regardless, then you'll know that at some point you'll be able to get through whatever that hardship is. And then you'll look back on it as a learning. So, it's sometimes it's difficult to look at that when you're in the moment. But if you can kind of just take that moment to step back a little bit, understand that it's not going to be forever, support yourself, surround yourself with people who support you, then you'll be fine.
Yeah. Before we get into serious questions, my uncle has a couple questions for you.
Sure.
What was it at Mad Monday at Rudy Vedgalo's house?
Oh, Vedalago? Well, so that was back when I was playing for University of Queensland.
Yeah.
In the first grade there, and big Rudy Vedalago was the second row partner of Nathan Sharp at the time. But I think, I was quite young then. I was only sort of 18, 19 years old. So, sort of playing up there with the big boys was new to me. And then also going on a Mad Monday with those guys was new. But I think it's one of those things where guys are, when your season's finished and you've been able to celebrate, a lot of hard times at training and wins and losses and good and bad and all that sort of stuff, you get to kind of just have one weekend when it all finishes where you can kind of just get dressed up in something quite silly, and then share a few drinks and enjoy, tell a few stories about the year. But some stories are probably better left unsaid.
He also said you were good hedging.
Okay, yeah, that was some silly behaviour back in the day where Rudy had some nicely groomed garden edges in his house, and we just felt that it was almost like a nice high jump mat, if you like. So we jump into his hedges, but that's not something I do anymore these days. It hurts too much when you get back out of the bushes.
He also said, how has it gone being vegan?
Oh, no, so I tried it last year. So I think there's, a lot of people, there's been a lot of dialogue spoken about people and the benefits of going plant-based and, whether it be vegan or even vegetarian, whichever one. And I heard a lot of people talking about it, and I guess your initial reaction is to judge, right? Like, I'd be like, why would you do that? But I was basing that judgment on nothing because I'd never tried it, never experienced it, didn't know whether it was good or whether it was bad, never researched it. So I always like to speak of something. If I have an opinion about something, I need to speak from a point of experience. So I thought to myself, before I start judging other people for doing it, then I'll do it myself. And so I committed to doing it for 1 month, and then I ended up doing it for 6 months because I was enjoying it. I felt like it took me a little while to understand where I was getting my energy, my protein, all that type of thing, because it was new to me. But once I kind of got to understand that and research a little bit more, and I was able to accommodate a diet that could help with what I was needing in terms of my training and everything else, then I found it really beneficial, to be honest. I lost a fair bit of excess weight that I didn't necessarily need. I had all the energy I needed to train. But I think at the end of it was just, so I stopped just the week before Christmas because I didn't think I could sit at the Christmas table and have all that beautiful food and only just dip into the vegetables. So
No one can.
Yeah, exactly right. So, I think it'd be something again that now what I've done is I do eat meat at times, but I also have days where I just eat, plant-based stuff as well. So I think like anything, it's about having a balanced diet. People will argue that you should go all the way vegan. Some will argue that you need meat every day. I just think it's all about balance. And if you find the right balance for you, then that's perfect.
Yeah, that was David Croft, by the way.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Yeah, he's my uncle. Anyway.
Oh, good stuff.
Was it hard moving all the time? And also after that, was it also hard to move from France?
Well, you know what? I think so my professional career, I had 4 years at Queensland Reds, 3 at Perth for the Force, 4 at the Waratahs, and then went to France for 4 years. But in many ways, it paralleled my upbringing because, like I said, my father was in the army, and the nature of being an army child is that you move every 12 to 18 months. So I went to 6 different primary schools just because we moved so frequently. And then I was just at the one secondary school, but we moved house a number of times within that period. But I think what it did for me was it gave me the skills in some ways to find out or how to adapt into different environments. So, I'd turn up to a new school and I'd have to find new friends and I'd have to find where I fit in and, which group of people I wanted to hang out with and which ones were in the right direction, which ones are maybe going to be the ones to avoid, all that type of thing. And you find your voice within different, social groups and that type of thing. So that upbringing, I think, really helped me with my professional life. And I think it also, after 2, 3, 4 years or whatever it is in my professional life, I feel like I need a change because that's kind of what I was used to growing up. So, when you ask, was it hard? I don't know really, because that's all I knew growing up. So for me, I loved my childhood. I loved everything I was able to experience with my brothers and my family and stuff. And I think it's held me in good stead in my adult life. But then when I went to France, France was difficult because it's a completely different culture. You're so far away from your close family and friends.
Different
language. Yeah, exactly, right. And then, and you're going to a team I was going to a team that had already had a great deal of success, and they had some amazing players in there that, so straight away there was, there's expectation but on yourself to make sure that you're worthy of your position. And you don't, what I didn't want is the guys that I'd played against and had respected for so many years to think less of me now as a teammate compared to how they thought of me as an opposition player. So that really drove me to make sure I was at my best. But the one thing that helped me a lot was having Matt Giddo and his family in France. So as you might know, I'm really close with Matt, but I spent sort of 5 nights a week with him and his wife, Bianca. And then, he had 2 boys, Levi and Kai, when they were based over there. And so I was really lucky to kind of be involved in their family for those 4 years that I was there in Toulon. And I think that really helped me be comfortable off the field, which then helps you play well on the field.
Yeah, so you've played for the Reds, the Western Force, and the Waratahs in Australia, and you've also played for Toulon in France. What's the difference in training style and play style from the 2 different competitions?
Well, I mean, I think the straight away the biggest difference with Super Rugby and Top 14 and that Heineken Cup stuff is the speed of the game. And I say that a lot of that's based around the conditions that you play in, but also the length of the season. So in France, you play 42 games in a year, so only one game a week. But so it starts in August, and it goes all the way through until June. Mid-June is the end of the season. So it's a really long season, and for those reasons, I don't think you can play at the pace that Super Rugby does. I think they play maybe 22 games or something. I don't think that they would be able to play at that level and that speed for 42 weeks of the year. So I think with that in mind, it's a bit more of and also the fact that it's Northern Hemisphere, where they put a huge importance on set piece, slowing down the game, the kicking for territory, field goals, penalty goals, and all that type of thing. So I found, and maybe this is a bit more of an excuse because I was getting into the wine and the cheese and the baguettes, but I felt I could put a few more kilos on in France because it was a slower game, but it was a bit more combative. So I had to be more physical. I had to be able to win those contact areas more. Whereas when I came back for Wallabies or when I was at Super Rugby, it was a real focus on speed, agility, top end speed, that type of thing to play, but also the ability to repeat those efforts at that speed as well, because the game's so much faster. So the training methods in Toulon, because we had some great players, but a lot of us were aging players, guys a bit older, and we had a great coach in Bernard Laporte, and he didn't make us do any contact training. For the 4 years I was there, I didn't have to attempt one tackle or a breakdown in 4 years of training, because he said there's so many games, there's 42 games a year, which gives us 42 opportunities to get injured. We don't need to create more opportunities at training. But that being said, there was an expectation on each player to make sure you turned up mentally, to turn up physically and execute your roles in defence and at breakdowns and that type of thing. The moment that we fell short of that would be the time that he would have made us do some contact. But when you're lining up and there's Bucky's Bothar or Chris Marceau and these really tough, mean guys, you don't really want to miss out on your role in defence, because I think they'd give me a bit of a hiding.
I'd love to do no contact at training.
Yeah, it's good, right?
It's so good. What do you prefer though? Going back, playing, did you prefer the Super Rugby methods or the France methods?
Hold on, buddy. Just wait 1 second, sorry.
Good. Did you prefer the France style or the Australian style more?
I think I needed the Australian style at that point in my career, because I think if I started my career with the training methodology like I had in France, I wouldn't have developed, just the basic skills around playing the game and the necessity of working really hard. Those little 1%ers getting up off the ground, all the stuff that I suppose you don't necessarily see in highlight reels is, the stuff that within the team you credit each other for, whether it's like someone working really hard in a kick chase or someone working really hard to get around the corner and fill the defensive line. Those little things that never gets too much credit in commentary or in highlight reels and that type of thing, but are really important for the success of your team. I think they're the types of aspects of the game that I learnt in Australian rugby, and was really lucky to have learnt that through my early years when I had, the senior players back when I first started, was the Gregans, the Jeremy Pauls, George Smiths, and those guys that put a really big emphasis on it and made you really accountable at training, as well as, because my first Wallaby coach was Eddie Jones, so he was pretty strict around those things as well. And the moment that you missed out on your role, or you took a bit of an easy, a shortcut or a bit of an easy decision, that you'd get called out for it. Whereas I don't feel like they had that when I was in France, whether it be for an older player like myself at the time or for some of the younger guys as well. So I feel like I was really lucky that I started the early part of my career, well, the majority of my career in Australian rugby, and was able to forge those habits. And so that even when I went to France, where the training probably perhaps wasn't as difficult or as strict, but I'd already implemented and I already sort of gained those habits, and I was able to still execute it when I was in those environments.
Yeah. What was the experience like playing in the World Cup for the Wallabies?
It's amazing. Once I was playing rugby, and it was, especially once you start playing for the Wallabies, the next thing that you want to do is play the World Cup. And so I had 3 opportunities to play the World Cup, but I had 3 different, really
What was the experience like at the World Cup in 2015, in your World Cups?
Yeah, so I was lucky to have 3 opportunities at World Cups, but they're all 3 really different experiences. So in 2007, I was a young 23-year-old that was just sort of forging my way into the team, and I started against Japan on the bench and then worked my way into the starting team for a couple of games, and then was actually dropped for my really close mate, Adam Ashley Cooper, for the quarterfinals against England, at which we bowed out in that game, unfortunately. But then in 2011, I was probably a little bit more of a I was at that point 27. We had a really young team going to 2011, but I dislocated my ankle in April against Queensland Reds, which really sort of halted, derailed my campaign going into that World Cup. But luckily enough, I was picked by Robbie Deans. I'd only played 20 minutes for Randwick going into that World Cup, and I mean, I think in hindsight, I just didn't have the opportunity to do enough training in my ankle, but also into my legs as well. So I think a few games into that World Cup, I went to pick a ball up off the ground against Russia and tore my hamstring, and was on the plane the next day, had to go home. So I got replaced by, I think Lachlan Turner came over for me. And so I watched the rest of the World Cup from home, and you're not allowed to stay in the country once you get injured, because once you're replaced, you have to go home. So, but then I went to France, and I thought, okay, well that's my World Cup experience is done. And then myself, and I think more so because of the performances of a guy named Mgtalkssport was really strong. Michael Cheika started looking at Gits, and then also other players that were overseas. And they changed those rules to allow people who had played over 60 games for the Wallabies to be picked. And I was lucky enough to be one of the guys alongside Mgtalkssport to come home and play in that World Cup. And again, I started that World Cup not in the starting team. And unfortunately for Rob Horn, he got injured. And then I got an opportunity to start, and then held on to my spot throughout the remainder of that World Cup. And that was just a really unique scenario, that one, because I don't think anyone really gave us too much of a chance. And then we got there, and it was just like, it was probably the best team environment that I've been involved in. One where we kind of kept it really quite insular, because we were copying it a fair bit externally from media and everywhere else. But then we started to kind of put out these performances where we started to win people over, and they really sort of started to believe in us the way that we believed in ourselves. And it was really cool to kind of see that shift and that support get right behind us. And look, unfortunately, we fell one result short. We lost the All Blacks in the final. But yeah, I mean, that was still a really special time in my career, and one that I'll remember for a long time.
Yeah, that 2015 World Cup, what was the experience like during that final, the week of it, getting ready, all that?
Yeah, look, I think Michael Cheika does a really good job in trying to make it understanding that it's not like every other game, but still trying to make as much as we can just like every other game. There was no point trying to kid ourselves by saying, oh, it's just another game, because it's the World Cup final, and if you win, you're the world champions. But so there's no point in players or coaches say, oh, it's just another game, same thing week in, week out. Because in the players' minds, there's going to be that kind of, well, it's not just like every other game, you don't want to sort of second guess that. So Czech was really good in terms of, managing our mentality going into that game, and really just sort of soaking it in. We were trying to limit distractions, because obviously that week a lot of people had family and friends and partners flying in from Australia to be there to experience it with us. So there was managing accommodation and tickets and all that type of thing, which is always, can be a distraction. Was trying to limit those distractions, and the support staff of the Wallabies are really good at trying to help everyone manage that and everyone feel really comfortable and accommodated. But then obviously it was all about the game, and so we did a lot about our game plan, picking apart the All Blacks game plan as much as we could, and going and really buying into a game plan that we thought was going to go out there and win us that game. And I remember going to bed the night before, and I was rooming with Gets, and we're just sort of. I genuinely went to bed that night thinking that this time tomorrow night that we were going to be world champions. And I think that's the one thing, like this, you can't hope to be world champions. You can't, you can't rely on luck and those types of things. Like, you've genuinely got to believe, and rightly or wrongly, some people might argue that it was false or whatever, but I genuinely, and myself along with all my teammates, we genuinely believe that we were good enough to go out there and do it. Now, as it turned out, the All Blacks were just too good for us, but you're never going to go out there and achieve anything unless you genuinely believe in what you're doing. And we were there, but we just came up against a pretty red hot All Blacks team.
Yeah, that All Blacks game, that hurt for everyone in Australia, and obviously players. Do you still have all your World Cup medals, like the 2015 one? Do you still have that?
Yeah, I think. Well, my parents do. They're in my parents' place. I don't have anything. Any sort of memorabilia or jerseys and things. They're all with my folks. At some point when I get my own place and I stop moving around and I settle down and build a place of my own that I want to stay in, then I'll probably get some of those things. But I've got like a bit of a cabinet at my parents' place where some of my most treasured things, like, you know, the cap that you get for your first game and for your 50th, and then you also get a cap for each World Cup you played in. And so there's a little cabinet with all those things, and the ball from the first game I played in, the boots from the last game I played in. So yeah, the World Cup medals and some of the championship medals we won over in France. So those types of things I hold on to. But yeah, a lot of my jerseys and stuff are just in a storage unit somewhere.
Yeah. What's it like being a commentator at the moment and like working on analysis and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, look, analysis was always something I quite enjoyed, picking apart the game and just understanding what it is that whether I'm in it, what we're trying to do, how you try and manipulate defenses, defensive patterns and systems and things, or defenders just individually as well, and trying to pick up on traits and different habits of different players so that you can try and expose them. And that was basically what I just had to transfer into my commentary, but then speak about it in a way that the listener or the viewer can understand it. But you know, I understood that I am not as polished as the guys that I was working with, the guys like Tim Horan and Kafer, and these guys have been doing it for 20 years who, it's not only about what you say, but it's how you say it. And I think they're really good at, you know, how they project their voice and how they create excitement and atmosphere and stuff like that. But, and then the one thing I was trying to bring was my intimate knowledge of the current group, because I'd played with them. I played with the majority of them. There's some young guys that I hadn't played with, but played with the majority of them. I knew a lot about each of the players and what they were trying to do or how they were trying to do it. And so, again, I was just trying to transfer that knowledge across in my commentary. And look, it's difficult sometimes, because sometimes you've got to be negative because what they're doing on the field is not necessarily that good. And you've got to speak about it in a way that, you know, is honest. But then at the same time, you know, these are some of my closest friends, and I've had to go out there and bag them publicly on TV or something. So there's an element of wanting to maintain friendships. But I think the one thing that all the players that I played with probably understand, I hope they understand, is that I would always speak the truth when I was in team environments and in team meetings. It was never anything personal. It was about us getting better, because I think feedback's the only way to get better, whether it's from coaches, teammates, or even out externally as well. Feedback is critical in getting better. And so one thing that I wrote down a few different things, I guess in a diary that I used to read before I went on air every time for commentary, was never say anything on TV that I wouldn't say to their face. So that was something I always tried to live by when I was commentating, was not to try and give them a little sucker punch, you know, with like a cheap shot in what I was talking about, if you know, just because it wasn't to their face. So I'd always try and maintain that level of honesty, that if I said something on TV, I'd be happy enough to back it up and speak to them one-on-one and explain why I thought that and that type of thing. And I think because of that, yeah, I guess I maintained some friendships, but also, you know, had some of those robust discussions with some players, because they felt maybe it was a bit unfair. But once we had conversations about it and explained, then, yeah, I guess then we understood.
Yeah, I get that. What's your greatest passion outside of rugby?
Oh, I mean, it's tough, right, mate? Because, you know, I mean, I've retired a few years ago, and it's, you know, and then it's thinking about, okay, what am I going to do next? And people would ask me, what are you passionate about? But the one thing I was so passionate about was rugby. So everything I thought about was, it kind of paled in comparison a little bit to what I was doing. So I had to find some new hobbies, and I had to find some things that were to fill voids of things that I was missing from when I was playing. So one thing I felt like I was missing was the application of a skill. So, you know, every day when you pick up the footy, you go to the park or at training, yeah, you're trying to just learn perfect pass, the spiral, the kick, or it's just repetition, right? It's that part of the brain where you're just doing repetition after repetition and trying to master it. And never do you get perfect at it, but it's the pursuit of that perfection, right? So I was missing that. But the other thing I was missing was the adrenaline you get when you're running out onto a field or when you're playing against, you know, another team or another player. And so I was missing those two things. So I wanted to try and find something that would give me adrenaline spike, but also the application of a skill. So I started to learn how to fly a helicopter. So, yeah, so so that's really difficult. It's like there's a controller for each hand, but also for both feet as well. So there's a lot going on with the skill and with trying to understand it all with your brain and that type of thing. It's quite exhausting. But I'd also get an adrenaline spike because I'm pretty scared of heights, if I'm being honest. So when I was up there and I'm trying to learn, and because you're only in a small little aircraft when you're learning, you'd bounce around quite a lot, and I'd lose my stomach and I'd get frightened. And so yeah, I found that filled the 2 voids that I was missing from playing. And I've picked up about 25 hours of learning time now. Still got plenty more to go, but I'm quite enjoying that at the moment.
Yeah. How long have you been doing that for now?
Well, about 6 months last year, but then I stopped over the summer just because of all the bushfires and the smoke in the air and that type of thing. So I couldn't get up, haven't been up in the air for a number of months now, but looking to get back into it. So I'd say I went pretty hard for 6 months, and then I've had about 4 or 5 months off, but looking to get back into it now.
When you were going pretty hard, how frequently did you do it?
I was doing at least 2-3 sessions a week. So it varied sometimes. So in terms of your logbook, you only logged how many minutes you're actually up in the air, how many minutes the engine was going. So sometimes there'd be theory, or I'd go in and I'd have to understand what it was we're trying to achieve and the theory of it, and then we'd go out and practice it. But it'd be sort of 2 to 3 times a week. But the only reason I didn't do more is because it's a pretty expensive hobby. So I had to kind of try and space it out a little bit.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I know this answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Who's the worst teammate to room with through your career, and why?
I don't know. I mean, towards the back end, I used to just be able to pick my roommate. So I was always mostly with Matt Giddo with the international teams, and I was with Curtly Beale a lot with the Waratahs. But I think maybe the worst, in a good way, was Wendell Saylor when I first started.
Oh, yeah.
So he was the winger for the Reds when I was there as well, and also with the Wallabies. But because he was, such a big superstar and he was on so much money, and I was only just sort of starting out, he would use his experience and seniority to kind of make me do things. We'd often take a PlayStation on tour and we'd play FIFA or something, and we'd get £50 when we go over to England for 2 dinners or something that week. And £50 for me at that time was a lot of money, and £50 for Gwendol wasn't very much. So he would say, mate, I'll play you in FIFA for your £50. And I go, oh, no, I kind of need it. I could space this out for 5 meals, let alone 2. He's like, no, we're playing, kid, let's go. And he'd start. And then I'd beat him, right? So I'd get his 50 quid. And then he'd go, okay, double or nothing. I'm like, no, I just want to go to bed. He's like, no, we're playing. Like, he wouldn't give me an option not to. And then I beat him again. So then I've got 100 quid. And then he would just keep playing me until he won. And then as soon as he won, he would never give me a chance to win it back. He'd just go, okay, the big Dell's going to sleep now, and he'd go to sleep. So it was always on his terms. And, he'd be like, oh, Drew, Big Dell needs this or Big Dell needs that. And so I'd have to go and get it for him. But he's a very close friend of mine. But he was just showing me the ropes, and he understood that. He understood, but I also understood that he was a senior player. And if he wanted something, I got it for him.
Yeah. When did he beat you finally? After how much money?
Yeah, well, in the end, I only lost my 50 quid each time, but it was every time because he would just keep playing me until he won, and then would never give me a chance to win it back. So, I guess he kind of, that was the experience of being an older player. He could just do it. He knew that I was never going to fight back. I couldn't go to the coach and dob on him or anything. So I just had to suck it up and just learn from him.
Yeah. Do you still have a PlayStation and play a bit of FIFA?
Yeah, I do actually, especially now through isolation. Just finding different ways to kind of, stop the boredom and keep busy. I've been working out a fair bit, but yeah, I've got. Look, I'm not very good. I'm not much of a gamer. I definitely only play the sporting games. I don't play Call of Duty or anything like that, because I can't use the 2 controllers where you move forward, but then you're with your gun. So I'm kind of in the background that's kind of going like this. I just can't control it. But so I just stick to the rugby game, FIFA, basketball. Yeah, those types of like the EA sports games. That's all I stick to.
What rugby game?
I don't know, the one that was quite old, but then I've just found one because I've just pulled it out. I didn't have it since I haven't played it since I was in France, and so it's just holed up in one of my storage units. And there's one that I think maybe 2014, rugby 14 or 16 maybe. Anyway,
Was it Rugby Challenge?
I'm not too sure. It's got the one with all the top 14. So when I was over in France, you could play with the team and that type of thing. So we had a pretty good side. So it was always fun to play with that.
I've got this one, Rugby Challenge 3, and it has Wallabies, Super Rugby. It has pretty much all the teams.
You're in
there. Go all right. Not the greatest, but I'm all right.
Oh, that's all right. Nice.
Yeah. What's the best word that can describe you right now?
The best what, sorry?
Word that can describe you right now.
Oh, isolated. Mate, I'm doing this self-isolation like many others, but I'm doing this one on my own. So, I live by myself, which makes it pretty lonely at times during this time. It's nice to sit here and chat to you because there's some days where I don't really get to chat to anyone. But no, I think outside of that, I don't know, one word. Look, mate, I'm just excited for the next challenge. You know, I wasn't commentating with Super Rugby this year. I actually signed to go back and play rugby in New York, up in the United States. So there's a pretty new competition called the Major League Rugby up there.
You going to play in that still?
Yeah, so they offered me, I guess, a deal to go up there and play again. Look, I haven't played for 3 years, but I've been training pretty hard to make sure that I'll be in a position where I can play. And
how long's the contract?
Well, a 2-year deal, which is good because this first year has been cancelled. So at least I'll get some.
Oh, you'll take that.
Yeah, and it was for me. It was like, again, I look for new opportunities, and like we've spoken about, I don't mind moving around and experiencing different cultures and putting myself in different environments. So when the opportunity came up to live in an amazing city like New York, I was like, yeah, let's do it. And if it meant that I had to get myself back into a shape to play again, then I was going to do it. And so I've been working really hard, and I literally got my visa approved. And then that weekend, then this, the coronavirus and COVID-19 kind of lockdown laws and that sort of thing came into play. So I've just had to put that on hold for a little bit. But I'm excited for the next challenge. Yeah,
I didn't know that. How many games are you going to play?
What's that, sorry?
How many games are in the season?
It's pretty similar to Super Rugby. So it goes from about February to June. So it won't be played this year. It'll just start again in February next year.
Okay.
We were waiting to announce anything until I got my visa and everything had come through. So and then obviously isolation and all that sort of thing happened. So it was kind of being pretty quiet about it. But so Matt, I was going to go up there and play, and I still will go up there as soon as they relax the borders and we can travel internationally again. And obviously New York are going through a pretty tough time with this coronavirus. So once they're back on their feet and everything's safe again, then I'll get up there and face myself in New York and pull the boots back on, mate.
Yeah. Have you announced it yet?
Like I've spoken about it. Like I haven't, there's no sort of, I'm not going to sort of call a press conference or anything, but I've spoken about it on another guy's podcast in the UK. A guy used to play for Scotland, Jim Hamilton. We've spoken about it. There's been a couple of articles, but I guess because there's no games in the immediate future, it's been pretty quiet. But hopefully I can get out there and I don't know, contribute in some ways, some positive ways, hopefully, some positive ways to our team, and then we'll see how we go.
What advice would you give a 12-year-old today?
Mate, firstly, just got to find what you're passionate about, right? And then just, if it's what you want to do, or if it gives you happiness and fulfillment and enjoyment, then do what you have to make sure that you expose yourself as much as you possibly can. Like there are times when I was a young guy and I had to say no to parties, or I had to say no to going here and visiting friends. But it was an easy choice for me because I was passionate about it and it was something that I loved. And if it was something that I wanted to try and pursue as a career, then they're the sort of the sacrifices you have to make. But I think most importantly, you've got to find the happiness in it, right? So you got to You've got to find enjoyment, the happiness. You've got to surround yourself with people that can kind of give you that as well, and do it for the right reasons. You've got to make sure that, because what you don't want to do is when it starts to feel like a chore or like a job, then all of a sudden the passion and the excitement and the fun goes out of it, and you just won't find yourself enjoying it, and then you'll just it won't be a passion of yours for too much longer. So you've always got to find, whether it's just in the training, the monotony of repetition, or whatever it is, whatever level you're at, you've just got to find the happiness and the enjoyment of it, because that's when you're going to commit 100% to it for as long as you can.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on today, Drew.
No worries, mate. Thanks for the call and thanks for reaching out.
All good. Hey guys, that was Drew Mitchell. As you guys heard, he's coming out of retirement to play for New York in one of the competitions starting up in the US. Hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. Don't forget to go subscribe to me on YouTube, Mgtalkssports. Go visit my website, www.mgtalksports.com. Also, go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe to me, Mg Talk Sports. Hope you guys enjoyed the podcast.